Most of us think of the Book of Ruth as this really beautiful, heartwarming story about loyalty and love, and it is. But what if it's so much more than that? What if it's actually a key, like a hidden blueprint, tucked away in the Old Testament that unlocks the entire story of the Bible? We're going to see how this one woman, a total outsider, became the surprising hinge that all of royal history turned on. All right, so to really get this, we're going to do something a little weird. We're not starting at the beginning. We're jumping all the way to the end, well, near the end, to the very first chapter of the New Testament. We're looking at the official family tree of Jesus, right? The royal line of the Messiah. And it's this long list of so-and-so was the father of so-and-so, which is exactly why what comes next is so jarring. See that? The author, Matthew, he stops the whole begat train to specifically call out the mothers. Now, in an ancient patriarchal family tree like this, that is super unusual. It's like a big flashing sign. He doesn't just mention them, he makes sure you see their names, Rahab, a Canaanite, and right there, Ruth, a Moabitess. So this brings us to the big question, right? In this incredibly sacred royal lineage, why them? Why are these foreign women, outsiders from nations that were often enemies of Israel, why are they given this place of honor in what is arguably the most important family tree in all of history? This isn't an oops. It's not an accident. There is absolutely a message being sent here. And here's the thing. Ruth isn't a one-off. She's actually part of this very small, very exclusive club. We're talking 4 Gentile women who are strategically placed right in the middle of the Messianic line. And what's amazing is that each one of them shows up at a moment when the whole line of promise is about to just fail. And it's their faith that keeps it going.
Okay, so to really understand Ruth's part in all this, we've got to rewind. We're going back to where her story actually begins, which is this really chaotic, dark time in Israel's history, the period of the Judges. It's total spiritual anarchy. And the story kicks off with a famine in a town with a very ironic name, Bethlehem, which literally means house of bread. No bread in the house of bread. Not a good sign.
And just look at the names of the family at the center of this. It's almost like they're prophetic. You've got the father, Elimelech. His name means my God is king. And what does he do? He abandons the land of his king. Then there are his 2 sons, Mahlon and Kilion. Their names mean sickly and failing. And well, they totally live up to their names. They go off to this foreign land, Moab, and they die there without any children. The family line is just empty. And this leaves us with the matriarch, Naomi. Her name means pleasant. But after all this tragedy, losing her husband, losing both of her sons, she comes back to Bethlehem with nothing, absolutely empty. She even tells her old friends, hey, don't call me Naomi anymore. Call me Mara. Mara means bitter. She says it's because God has dealt bitterly with her. All the pleasantness is just gone. But just when you think this is just a story of bitterness and death, it gets completely turned on its head, and it's all because of the faith of one person who honestly has no business even being in this story, Ruth, Naomi's daughter-in-law from Moab. And I really can't overstate how scandalous this would have been. The book goes out of its way to remind us 7 different times that Ruth is the Moabites. Why keep repeating that? Well, because according to the law in Deuteronomy, Moabites were seen as historical enemies of Israel, born from an incestuous line. The law was clear. They were forbidden forever from being part of God's community. And yet, when Naomi tells her, look, just go back home, go back to your people, to your gods, Ruth makes this absolutely radical vow. And listen, this isn't just some sweet, sentimental promise. No way. This is a revolutionary act. It's a full-on conversion. She's literally renouncing her country, her family, her entire religion to attach herself to this bitter old woman and to her God. So the big question is, how is Israel going to respond to this? Here's a forbidden outsider who's just pledged her life to their God. And this is where the story's hero, a man named Boaz, steps onto the scene. And with him, we learn about this beautiful spiritual idea that works way beyond just the letter of the law. And that principle is a Hebrew word, hesed. Now, it's a little tricky to translate into just one word, but think of it like this. It's a loyal love, a fierce, loving kindness that goes way beyond what you're legally required to do. It's all about what you choose to do because of your loyalty and faithfulness.
Ruth showed incredible hesed to Naomi, and now Boaz is about to show that same hesed back to Ruth. Now, this part is absolutely crucial to get. Boaz was not actually forced by the law to marry Ruth. There was this thing called Levirate marriage, but that was a duty for a direct brother of the man who died. Boaz was a more distant relative, what they called a goel, a kinsman redeemer. In fact, there was another relative who was closer in line, and he straight up refused. Why? He said it would mess up his own inheritance. So when Boaz steps in, that's a choice. It's purely voluntary. It is an act of pure grace. So why? Why was Boaz so willing to show this kind of grace to a foreign woman? Well, it's because he had seen this exact kind of story play out before in his own family. You see, Boaz's mother was Rahab. Yup, that Rahab, the Canaanite from Jericho who was saved because of her incredible faith. So when Boaz looked at Ruth, he didn't just see a forbidden Moabite. He saw a courageous woman of faith, just like his own mom. And right here, this is where everything just clicks into place. You have the radical faith of an outsider, Ruth, met by the incredible grace of a man who totally understood outsiders, Boaz. And that combination, it forges the most famous royal family line in all of history. I mean, just look at how this unfolds. Rahab, the Canaanite, has a son named Boaz. Boaz marries Ruth, the Moabitess. Together they have a son named Obed. Obed then has a son named Jesse. And who is Jesse's son? King David, Israel's greatest, most beloved king. The royal line is quite literally built on a foundation of outsiders who were welcomed in. And that whole prophetic journey we saw in their names, it comes full circle. The story started with Naomi's bitterness, Mara. That bitterness was met by Ruth's incredible faith and loyalty. Her faith was then redeemed by Boaz, whose name means "in him is strength." And the final result of all that bitterness, faith, and strength coming together? David, whose name simply means beloved. But you see, when you pull back, this ancient story isn't really just about King David's family tree. It's something more. It's like a perfect miniature model, a blueprint, if you will, for the much, much bigger story of redemption that we see unfold in the New Testament. Just think about the parallels for a second. Here, in the town of Bethlehem, you have a worthy kinsman, Boaz. He willingly pays a price to redeem one single foreign bride, Ruth, and brings her into the family, saving her from a life that was totally empty. Now fast forward, centuries later, in that exact same town of Bethlehem, another kinsman is born, Jesus. He becomes our kinsman, one of us, by taking on a human body. And he willingly pays the ultimate price to redeem not just one bride, but a whole global family of outsiders. All of us believers, the church. What happened to Ruth on a physical, historical level is the perfect picture of what the New Testament says happens to every non-Jewish believer on a spiritual level. We're described as wild branches, right? The outsiders. But through faith in Israel's Messiah, we get grafted into the family and all the promises of God. Ruth, she's the original. She's the historical prototype for all of us. And that kind of leaves us with this one final thought to chew on. The Bible's grand story of redemption, it doesn't just include outsiders. It actually seems to depend on them. The whole thing is built on this scandalous kind of grace that welcomes in the unexpected. So if that's the pattern for the most important story in history, what does that say about the role for the unexpected people or the unexpected turns in our own stories?